Hello and welcome back to the channel. In our last video we accomplished a lot. We set up our Xcode project to receive remote push notification as well as set up a Firebase project for our sample application. In this video we're going to take things one step further. If you remember, in the last video our notifications are only delivered to our device if our if our application is not active or if the device is asleep. Let me illustrate that right now by going back to the notification console in Firebase. So if we go into notifications, I'm just going to duplicate this notification that I had earlier in the week, and we're going to change the date just to show that we're sending it here. Let's change it to 9/17. I'm just going to label it device is asleep. And then if we look, we can see that my device is on, but I haven't unlocked it or anything like that. And I'm going to send this message. And we will see that on the device, the notification pops up like we would expect. And then I can clear this because we don't need it. Now, if we unlock the phone and open the application, this of course is just a blank screen at this point because we have no UI. But in a real life scenario, this would be your full application. So now let's see what happens if our application is active and we attempt to deliver a notification to it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to duplicate this. Let's duplicate this guy since we already sent him. And so we're going to change the name here. Notification. We'll say application is active. And so we're still active here. I'm just going to resend this. I'm going to say send message. And so now it won't take long. Let's just refresh this page. The device went to sleep, or device flashed real quick, but nothing happened. So, so this is by design. By default, your notifications aren't going to be delivered to your device, or they're not going to display on your device when the device is in the foreground. But what we want to do is let's fix that. So if we go into our app delegate in our Xcode project, there's something simple that we can do. So let's go to the bottom here and let's add another function here. So if we start typing will present down here a little bit, if we scroll down here, this function, select it, and this function is called will present notification. And so within here, what we can do is we can call the completion handler for this. And then within the completion handler, we can give it some options here, or a option here. So here we're going to say dot alert. So what will happen is when we are trying to deliver this notification when the device is in the foreground or the device is active, we're going to show the alert. And so I'm going to save this. I'm going to run this again, send the update to the phone here. It'll take just a moment. All right, so this is deployed to the phone now. So I'm going to go back into my notification console, and I'm going to duplicate this notification. And here I'm going to say notification application is active, but here I'm going to say take 2 because we just made a change, and I want to make sure that we see the difference. And so then if I say send message and say send again, we'll now see that my notification is delivered while the application is in the foreground, which is great. So on the surface, that doesn't seem like that might be that useful, because why would you want to be notified? Why would you want a notification while you're already in the application. So what we can do is we can make some changes here in our application, and let's actually make some UI now for our application. So I'm actually going to take out this line here because we don't need that any longer. And so let's close that, or let's remove that. And actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to access a property. I want to add something to this function that will actually increase the badge number, which is the little red icon that you see on all your applications. You know, when there basically are unread items in your application. So like you can see on the Messages app, there's a little red one. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase. Every time I get a notification, I'm going to increase the badge number. And so to get to the badge number, what we can do is we can type UI application dot shared, and then there's this property called application icon badge number. Okay, and what I want to do is that every time we get a notification here, I want to increase that by 1. And this line here we'll just add 1 every time that we come in here. And you can see on my phone that I've already got two unread what it thinks are unread notifications. And so if I send this down to the phone again and let that run, and we come back to the console, and then I duplicate this message, and I'm going to send it down again. Nothing happens on the phone, which is expected because I removed the line where we actually alerted the phone. But now if I just hit the home button, you can see on the actual icon that I now have a 3 instead of a 2, and that is because of this line that I added to increase the badge number. Now that is great, right? But why is that useful? How is that useful? So let's go to our storyboard, and let's just make a couple modifications here, so I can illustrate why that might be in a real world example where this might be useful. So let's do a couple things. So earlier I found this image that I want to use for this example. This is this message bubble here, and so I want to do is I want to drag that image over into. It's like I already did that. So we have this image. This image of basically like a notification bubble that you might see on a regular app somewhere. And so what I want to do is I want to make a little bit of a UI here for demonstration purpose. So I'm going to add a UI image view. Make sure I'm in the right section here. I'm going to add a UI image view onto the screen here. I'm just going to make that 100 by 100. It's nice and square. And then I'm going to set the image to that message bubble that I found, and just change the content mode to aspect. We'll leave it at aspect fill, which should be fine for our example. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it here. Put it in the corner. Put it in the corner, and then just pin that. We'll pin it 10 and 10. Okay, and so it's going to stay in the corner there for now. Actually, I want to just constrain it to the height and width, just so it's a little smaller. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to add just a regular label, just So regular label, that's going to end up being, so this label is going to end up being the, basically what would be the badge number. But for our purposes, we're just going to change some property here. So let's make it more look like the badge. We're going to make it red. I'm going to change the font here just so it's something a little friendlier. And then I'm going to make it about 30 points large. And so this is going to end up being, this will just end up being a number, like so. So I'm just going to size it a little bit. And then also I'm going to make it bold. Okay, and so what I want to do is I'm going to take this, I'm just going to place it in the middle here. You know, most applications would have it, you know, up in the upper right hand corner, but I'm just going to put it in the middle here for the time being. And so the idea will be, you know, when we get notifications while we're active in this application, then our badge number will increase. Which is, you know, kind of similar to like a Facebook or a, you know, Slack app or something like that. And so for now I'm going to set this to be blank, because if there are no notifications, then this would be blank. Okay. So to do some additional setup, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my assistant editor. And I know that I'm going to need some outlets right off the bat, right? So I'm going to need I know for later I'm going to need the, basically the image for the message bubble. And I also know that I'm going to need the label as well, and so we're just going to call this the notification number. Okay, and so other things that I know that I'm going to need is I'm going to need at least a function for updating the label. So I'm just going to put in a marker here, call this update badge label. It's going to show us an error because it doesn't exist yet, but I know I'll need it. The other thing I want to do is I want to have the ability, so like if you're in one of the familiar apps that you use, like if you're in a Facebook or, like I said, Slack app, whenever you touch the icon, the notification label, the number goes away. So I know I'm going to want to do that as well. So I'm going to, in order to do that, I'm going to want to set up a tap gesture for my image. So I'm going to have another function here called setup bubble image tap gesture. And that's just going to be a simple tap gesture recognizer that we have. The last function here that we're going to need is, so basically in our app delegate, we know that we're going to have notifications that come in. We're going to increase this number. We're going to have a way for our view controller to basically respond to those, basically to be notified when that happens. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to set up some notification. We're going to set up one notification observer in the view controller, and then what we'll do is we'll set up a notification to be sent from the app delegate. So within the view controller, we need a function to actually listen for those updates, and we're going to call this start listening for badge updates, like so. All right. And from there, I think we're good for now for function declarations. So let's you know, actually before we get moving into there, I know we're going to need some other functions here. So let's just go ahead and at least write out their definitions. So I know for start listening for badge updates is we're going to need a function to actually update the to respond to the notification once it's found. So we're going to call this badge was updated. We're going to leave that like so for now. Let's make it updated. And then the other piece here, we're going to need a function to respond to the tap gesture whenever we press the image bubble. We also need a function for that. So we're going to call that bubble tapped. Okay. And all right, so those I think we're good there for now, and I think we're good with the assistant editor as well. So let's close that just to get some space back, and let's get back over to our view controller. So let's just start going down the list here of the functions that we created, and let's write out what we're going to need. And so first, let's make a definition here. So func start listening for badge updates. This will clear our first error. Let's write out our next function here. Set up bubble image tap gesture. We should clear our second error. And then let's do our last one here. Func update badge label. And that should clear our last error. Great. So now let's go through and let's build out these functions that we need. So in our start listening for badge updates, it's really just going to be one line of code here. And so what we want to do is we want to set up an observer. So we want to call notification center .default .add observer. Okay, and we want to observe ourselves. And our selector is going to end up being the function that we created below. Badge was updated. And then the name of our notification, we can pick any name that we want. But to make things clear, let's call it. Let's use what ended up being our bundle identifier. com.douglas develops, and then the name is, let's say that we're going to call it badge was updated. And then that name will come into play in a little bit when we actually post a notification from within the app delegate file. And then for objects, we don't need anything at the moment. Okay, and then this warning red bubble is going to tell us a couple things. One, in Xcode 9 or Swift 4, you need to add these @objc declarations for these selectors. So we're just going to say fix that. And then it's also going to say that we need to fix our name declaration here, which is fine too. And so that's all we need for that function. So when our view loads, we're going to start listening for those notifications in this view controller. The next thing we want to do is we just want to set up our image tap gesture recognizer. So we'll say let tap gesture equal UI tap gesture recognizer. We're going to arrow down and select the second option here. Target is going to be ourselves, and again our selector is going to be within this function. We'll say self.bubble tapped, and that'll create the tap gesture recognizer, and this will do a little setup for the the gesture. So tap gesture dot number of touches required is going to be 1. The number of taps required is also going to be 1. The other thing that we have to do is we want to set up our image, so our image bubble, we want to set up to allow user interaction so we can actually press it. And then the last thing we want to do is we just want to add the gesture to the image, and just like so. And then that's it. Let's clean this up a little bit. And then the last part of this is we want to set up our function that will actually update the label when we need to update the label. So here we're gonna just make a quick decision. So we're gonna say, so if UI application dot shared dot application icon badge number is equal to 0. So in other words, if there are no kind of unread notifications, so to speak, we don't want to show this label at all. So we're going to say is hidden equals true. Okay. However, if there are, then we want to take and set the text property of the label equal to the current amount of badges, items are on display. So shared dot application icon badge number. So this is actually an integer. So what we want to do is we want to take and convert this or cast this to a string. And since there are, since I know that there are, at least one, I know this this conversion is likely to succeed. And then we had one more of these, adding this objc to our selector function. So we'll just fix that and we'll be good to go. All right, so one last thing that we want to do is, let's just clean this up a little bit. One last thing that we want to do is we need to build out our 2 selector functions here. So when the badge was updated, we want to show the label. So we'll set the is hidden property to false. And then again, we're going to set the notification labels text property to this value here. Okay. And then the last thing that we want to do is when the image bubble is tapped, we want to set the UI application dot shared dot application icon badge number. We want to set that to 0. And then again here we're going to set the notification label to hide because we're going to have nothing to show. Okay, so now we're good. I think we're good to go in here. We have all the code that we need. So when the view loads, we're going to start listening for these notifications. We've set up our our tap gesture recognizer for our image view, and so when that gets pressed, we're going to clear out the. Actually, one more thing that we can do just for cleanliness here is let's take and set the text property to be blank or empty string. And then we have our right. So right immediately when we call this, we're going to call update badge label, and that's going to make a decision if there's anything to show initially. Then actually, you know what? There's a little extra bit of extra code that we don't need here. So when we initially load this, we are going to call update badge label, which will make a decision of whether or not to show anything in the label. And then actually when we call badge was updated, we actually don't need to do any of this because we can just call update badge label. So we can get rid of a little bit of extra code. So when update badge label is called based on the notification that we're going to receive, we'll do the same check. And if the badge number is 0, then we're going to hide. We'll hide the label. Otherwise, we'll show. We'll show the text. And then one thing here, just to make sure, we'll say. We'll make sure that this label is not hidden. And so that should be all we have to do here. The one last thing that we have to do is over in our app delegate is we'll actually need to, when this notification comes in, we'll actually need to, when this remote notification comes in, we'll need to post a notification in our application so that our view controller can grab it and then act on it. And all we have to do there is we call notification center.default post. I'm going to select the first option here, and I'm going to call. I'm just going to put an empty string there. This is going to be nil. And actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to go over to my view controller just so we don't have any typing errors. I'm going to take this whole thing here. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to paste that in just so that there are no typing mistakes. And then this is going to give us the same the same fix, which I'm gonna accept there. And so now what will happen is when this notification comes in, it's going to post so that anything listening in our application can receive it. And so then when that posts, the observer that I set up, which is this function here, is going to get called, and then we're going to update our badge accordingly. And so let's see that in action. Hopefully, if we've done everything right, this will work perfectly. All right, so we can kind of already see that this at least partially works. There's a little bit of a layout issue, but I'm not going to concentrate on fixing that right now. But so if we look at the phone screen, we see that the number 3 is in the bubble here. And so if I touch the image, then you see that the 3 goes away, which is what we were looking for. But now, if I go over to my notification console, I'm going to duplicate one of these, and then I'm just going to rename this. Actually, it doesn't really matter what I'm going to rename it because we're not going to see it. So I'm just going to resend this. So what we should see is on the screen without having to do anything. We should see the icon, the label within the image icon should update. Then it does. And so now it's a 1. And then if I do this again, it should update to a 2. And so on and so forth. And then if I press the image again, it'll disappear. And so that's exactly the way that I want it to work. So there's one additional thing that I didn't point out. So if we look here, and this, this is going to come in handy for the next video that I'm gonna publish about the device to device notifications. But if we look in here, there's this really long string of characters, and this is the Firebase cloud messaging registration token. This is a unique token that identifies this particular device. And then actually I have a note here. a note here. I have a couple different devices. This is my primary phone, and this is my testing phone, and so those change from device to device, and and Firebase makes the decision about when to update them, and so they have to update them at any point without you really knowing it. And so there's no real great way to get them. But I'm going to show you how I got mine, and then how you're going to get yours in order to to work through this example. And the reason that comes into play for device to device notifications in your own applications, you're going to have to decide how you're going to get them and keep them in order to send notifications to other people's devices, and where you're going to store them, and how you're going to store them. So what I did is in the connect to FCM function, what we can do is this. We can write a little statement here. We'll say if let, we're just going to call this token equals instance ID dot instance ID dot token. Then I'm going to print, I'm going to put a little tag in here and say DCS, which are my initials, and then I'm going to append this token. Okay, and so then I'm going to stop. This from running. I'm going to clear my console, and then so what's going to happen is when we start up our application, we're going to connect to Firebase, and it's going to, go through all of the configuration that it does. And so when I connect, I'm going to attempt to get this unique token from the Firebase service. And so, in the application, we try to connect at a couple points. When it becomes active. When we've refreshed the token, etc. And so what this is going to do is going to say, if I have a token, then I basically want to print it. So then I'm going to run this application one more time. I'm going to let it boot up here, or start up here, and it did. And so I can see here that I have. And so what I'm going to do, and the reason I put this, where did I put this? Right here. The reason I put this DCS here is what I can do is in this filter box, I can actually type DCS, and then it'll filter it out for me, and then this is the unique cloud messaging token that Google assigns. And then so what you would do is in your notifications that you're trying to send, you would paste it into this box here, and then send a notification. But that's it for this video. I hope that was helpful, and if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. If you're enjoying these videos, please subscribe. We'll see you next time.